Hey everyone, I'm Kate Kennedy and I'm here with day 95 of 100 Days of Kane, PA. And family businesses have been such a foundation of our community for generations. And today we're going to talk with Sue Zook Wilson and Ken Zook about the legacy of their family business. And you're going to hear some great stories from them today. So I'm going to go ahead and flip you around. We'll walk on over and say hello. Hi, you guys.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
How are you?
Good. Hey, thank you both so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to hearing the stories that you have to share. And, Sue, we're going to go ahead and start with you. Could you tell us the story of how the Zook family ended up in Kane and where they came from?
Sure. The Zook family originally came from Switzerland. There were four brothers that were experiencing the persecution of the Anabaptists in Switzerland, and so they decided to immigrate to the United States. Back in Switzerland, their name was spelled Z-U-G, and so when they came to America, they Americanized the spelling, and that's how we have Z-O-O-K, although we chuckle, people still can't pronounce it. Ken will say it rhymes with look, book, everything, but they mostly settled in eastern PA. We have quite a bit of our family that are Mennonite, and they settled there, and then our grandparents moved to Kane.
Okay. And about what year, what decade was that?
That would have been in the 1920s.
Okay, and then I'll ask you, Ken, when they got to Kane, what are some of the things that they did?
In the 1920s, when our grandparents moved to Kane, our grandfather, John Erskine Zook, started to work at J.E. Healy was the Ford dealership in Kane, and he started working there, and then in 1925 he became the sole owner. He did have a brother that was a partner before that. Mm-hmm. There was four of them in that partnership. The business became Midway Garage in 1925. They named it Midway Garage because we were midway between Buffalo and Pittsburgh.
Oh, that's really interesting.
A lot of the dealer meetings they would have at the Kane location, at Midway Garage, and it just made it more convenient for other dealerships to get to one local,
more centralized
location.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then so you said he bought it in 1925, and was running it for a while. Was there any stories of times that maybe were a little bit harder, and how he was able to do different jobs to help make ends meet?
Well, during the war and everything was slow, Ford actually started building military vehicles, and car sales were pretty much minimal to nothing.
So this was in the 1940s.
Yes. He ran for Pathonetary,
Oh.
and that's what he did to make ends meet. The dealership I'm sure they did some maintenance work and service work, but for the most part, there was no business going on anywhere. And after that, things started to pick up again, and 1949 is when they became Zook Motors.
So changed from Midway.
Became incorporated. We have a picture here of the employees at Zook Motors at the old building on Field Street.
Which one's your grandfather? Aw. Right, so the original business was on Field Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's neat. That's a great photo. Look at everybody. So formal and fancy.
Oh, yeah.
And so 1949 is when the name changed from Midway to Zook Motors.
Yes. And this is a view of the building in 1925. And then a few years later, they did some renovations to make it a little more updated for the time period.
So we have the
guess.
before
Yep.
and the after. That looks nice. This is great. This is great documentation that you have.
Our grandfather had put this scrapbook together years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
So in 1949, we became incorporated, became Zook Motors. It was 1954 that he had passed away. Our grandfather passed away.
Okay.
Our dad was only 18 years old at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and came home from college to try to help with the family business. Our Uncle Bruce was running the business, or there. He was working there, and he ran the business after that. And this is a picture. This is a picture of Bruce Zook.
So he stepped in. So your grandfather passed in 1954, and then he was working there already, and he ended up stepping into that position.
Yes.
And there's a nice photo there too.
Yeah, that would be our Uncle Bruce and our dad, and that was during the punt, pass, and kick. Kids are getting
that's right.
an award, yeah.
Well, Sue, can you tell us then, how did you get involved? How did you come into the
Well then, so my Uncle Bruce and my dad were here for 30 years together. My Uncle Bruce was the general manager. He ran everything at the dealership. Our dad was in the service department at that time. And then our Aunt Carol, Bruce's wife, managed the office for the business. So for 30 years, that's the way things were. They worked hard, gave back to the community, and the business became a foundation in the community. It grew, and for 30 years, Bruce ran it, and my dad was in the service area, and then they had a salesman, Greg Rich. And there were only, I think, 6 or 7 people at that time. And then a tragedy struck, and our only salesperson, Greg Rich, died in January, and then our uncle, Bruce, had cancer, and he died in February. And so I came home from college to help my dad, and it was just temporarily. My Aunt Carol stayed for a few years to help too. And I came home just to help temporarily, just to see if I could do anything to help my dad, because he was in the service department, had never sold a car in his life. And we really saw the community rally around the business. I think that the legacy of my grandpa, our uncle, our aunt, the legacy of them building the business is what had created that foundation. And then people supported us even though we didn't have a clue what we were doing. You know, my dad had never sold a car in his life. I was a kid in college. I didn't have a clue about anything in the real world. And Ford Credit and Ford Motor Company gave us a franchise. You know, you have to petition to get a franchise, and they gave us the franchise. What we didn't know at that time was they only gave it to us for a year. They really didn't think we could do it because my dad didn't have any management experience. My uncle had done all of that. My aunt did all of the, the bookkeeping, ran everything in the office. And even though she was there, missing my uncle and Greg, that really was a hard thing for the dealership. And lo and behold, 5 years later, Ford Credit came and paid us a visit, and they told Dad and I, Ken wasn't there yet at that time, but they told Dad and I that they had only given us a 1-year temporary franchise because they never thought we ever could do it. And we look back later on and we both said, oh my gosh, we're glad they didn't tell us, because we were too dumb to know it was a hard thing to do. It was very, very, very difficult. But
you guys had the work ethic and,
Yep.
and the determination to make it work, and you figured it out.
And the legacy.
And
You
the
know,
legacy,
without our grandpa, without our uncle, without our aunt, we wouldn't have had a business to run.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point.
and we were good hard workers. We spent a lot of hours there learning all the things that there were to learn. And we had the legacy of Greg too. Rich, he knew everybody in town. I mean, he was our salesperson, so he had built lots of relationships with people, just like our Uncle Bruce and our Aunt Carol. And then our dad, knew lots of people, but he'd always been in service. So
I think it's funny because you say you came to help temporarily.
I did, and 35 years later, I'm still here. So,
what are some of the stories or memories that you have of your time over the last 35 years?
well, we have lots of good stories. I think one of the best stories is being able to work with family. We talk all the time about how the whole dealership, all the employees are family. We spend more time together than we do with our own biological families, and how much we appreciate each other and working together. And I loved having the opportunity to work with my dad for all those years.
Of course.
When I left college, it was a very funny thing. Most of my friends thought I was crazy to go home and work with my dad, because he'd never let you do anything and it'd always have to be his way. And our dad wasn't like that. He appreciated the strengths and the gifts and talents that Ken and I both brought to the table, and always let us use them. And I think that's one of the greatest parts of our legacy that we have, is that he helped us grow into the people that we are. And that was really a blessing for us.
So in the early days, when you were first figuring everything out,
We had some stories. Yes.
could you share some of those?
Yes. One story I'd like to share about Greg Rich, which was really funny. A customer brought in, back in the day, any of the people watching that remember the bird column, we had a customer who had bought a vehicle from us here a little while ago, and his mom had clipped out for him the bird column, and Greg knew everybody. And one day he was showing a vehicle to somebody, and they got in to go for a test drive, and lo and behold, there was a little boy in the back seat. And when they got back to the dealership, Greg complimented the gentleman on his little boy and how well behaved is one. And the gentleman looked at Greg and said, "My little boy, I thought that was your little boy." Well, the little boy lived in the neighborhood and just had decided to scamper into the back seat and go for a ride because he saw all those cars coming and going all the time. He wanted to go for a ride too. So
that is so funny. So they both thought it was each other's son.
Yes,
and it was,
yes.
it
was a great story. Great story. Can't imagine something like that today, but
No.
it was a great story.
That's awesome.
And some of the things that were so hard that we were learning, I remember looking at a pile of warranty claims, not having a clue what to do with them, and we just had to learn how to do that. One of the things when Ken and I were talking about this, I even shared, I actually cried in the back of the Field Street business. I was ordering cars. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I ordered a Crown Vic, which back in the time, that was our luxury vehicle, the Grand Marquis and the Crown Victoria. And I ordered it with vinyl seats like you would order a police car. And when they brought it off the convoy, I think that was the worst one I ever had, other than the time Blue Sapphire was purple. And it was, a really, it was going to have a unique market who was going to buy the vehicle, that was for sure. But anyway, so I had this car and I stood there and I had tears in my eyes and I thought, I can't do this. Well, we ended up selling the car to an older lady, and she loved those seats versus the velour she had in her last one because she could slide on it.
It all ended up working out.
It did all end up working out, but it was a journey. It was a journey.
It sounds like it. Oh gosh, those are some good stories too.
Yeah, they were good stories.
How about you, Ken? You went away to school and ended up coming back too, right?
Yeah.
What are some of your memories, either as a kid or even since then, of being connected to the family business?
Well, a lot of people have asked me over the years, what made you decide to come back?
Mm-hmm.
And, why did you want to work at your family's business? And I've often answered that question with, I never really decided. It just kind of happened. I remember as a little boy working with my dad. He would come in on a Saturday or come in on a Sunday and finish up a vehicle, or there'd be somebody that their car wouldn't start at church on Sunday morning and it would need a battery. Well, my dad would go to the garage, get a battery, and we'd go put it in for the customer. But in doing all that with my dad, it just kind of intrigued me. I then started working on different things, helping my dad. I remember, as I do things today, I remember the little things that my dad had told me to, on how to do things.
Mm-hmm. That's really special to have that.
And so I really never did think about it. It just kind of all fell into my lap, all fell into place, and here I am. But I did go away to school. I came back, and we're still here.
Mm-hmm. You were telling me earlier about a memory you had from being a kid on Saturdays and Sundays. Will you share that story?
Yeah, when we were on Field Street, we didn't have a lot of vehicles, but we had more vehicles than we had parking spaces in the parking lot out back. And on Saturday afternoon, we would work till noon, and then we would have to bring all the vehicles. There was usually maybe 10 or 12 in the back parking lot of the Presbyterian Church here in Kane. And we would use their parking lot to store extra vehicles, whether they're a customer vehicle that was getting work or a used car. But we would store them all over there. So Saturday afternoon, we would have to move them all over the dealership. We would pack as many as we could inside and up the driveway. And then on Sunday after church, we would move them all back over again.
So you knew what your weekends
Yeah,
held.
so, and that's kind of where I got started. I was just,
always
I don't
around.
even know how old I was, but very young. And so I remember being there with my dad, and even after we would get all the vehicles moved, there was always something else that would need done. And my dad would have me sweep the floor or wash a car or something. There was always something that needed done, and that's really that's, you know, the foundation of where I started to learn, you know, how to fix cars and how to work on things.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that even now, like, what strong memories you must have of your dad every single day, because this is so tied to your connection with him.
Oh, absolutely. There's not a day that goes by that Sue and I don't think about him
Yeah.
in some respect. You know, whether it's, you know, we see something that just reminds us of him. Somebody coming through the door that's whistling. My dad always whistled. Everywhere he went, he was whistling.
Yeah.
And one of our employees, he's been here 35 years, said that to me the other day. He heard a customer come through the door and he was whistling. And Larry turned around and thought, wow, John's coming through the shop. And, you know, obviously he wasn't, but
Yeah.
just those memories.
Yeah.
And there's something like that that touches us every day.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, the oil boiler we have for the furnace, it gives us trouble every now and then. And that was always my dad's thing. And when I have to go in and work on that, I chuckle to myself that, oh, this would have been Dad doing this.
Yeah.
And just one more thing we had to take over. But
Yeah, that's a really neat thing about being a family business.
Yeah.
That it's so much part of you from childhood on. So
Yep.
that's really great. And then you were on Field Street for a very long time. So from 1925 until your move out here. What year was that?
we moved out here in October of 2002. We've been here 17 years, which is very hard to believe. It seems like it was just yesterday that we moved out here. We had talked to Dad about, well, Sue and I talked about the possibility of maybe building a new store, and we were both a little nervous to bring it to my dad and pitch the idea to him. And we did, and we had lots of talks about it and decided this was something we were going to do. And the property we're on now is a customer of ours, and we purchased the property from him, and lots and lots of planning.
Sure.
My sister and I, we visited 10 or 12 different dealerships to try to figure out exactly what we wanted and what we didn't want. And we ended up with something that we've made work, and it has worked very well for us.
And you have a picture there of the newspaper article.
This is from our grand opening. The newspaper dates October 4th of 2002.
And what's this one on the bottom? This picture here on the bottom.
This is Tim Robinson from Tim's Plumbing and Heating, and he actually requested to buy the first vehicle from Zook Motors at the new dealership.
I love that. That's like such a small town Kane thing,
Yeah,
isn't it?
and it's neat that it was another business in our community that wanted to do that.
Yeah.
He wanted a piece of the history of Zook
Yeah.
Motors.
I love that.
And
I love that.
Tim still has this van.
Oh, that is awesome. That's so great. Well, and we heard a lot about the community, you know, that how much the community has supported you guys, and you support the community too. And one of your signature events is the Drive for Your School. So Sue, could you tell us a little bit about how that got started and anything about it?
Yeah, it's probably been, I would guess, 8 years now that Ford started to offer to dealers Drive for the School and Drive for the Community. Drive for the School was first, and then a few years later they came out with Drive for the Community. And so a lot of dealerships don't participate, which I'm always surprised, because it's really a wonderful way to give back that Ford does. Long ago, Ford would give donations, and sometimes people weren't happy with who they donated the money to. This is the best way to donate. Give back to the dealers so they can give to the community and support causes that are important here. And so we've raised over $65,000 now for the school and for various not-for-profits in the community that we've done a drive event for. And we have one on October 5th. It's for all the music students at the high school, the marching band, the concert band, the orchestra, the drum line, and chorus. So
That's
it's
awesome.
It's from 8 to 1.
8 to 1
Yes.
on October
Yes,
5th.
on
So
October
people just
5th.
come out and test drive a car,
Yep,
and that's
yep.
what
And then
helps.
Ford donates $20 for every test drive.
That's awesome.
So-
It's so great that you guys participate in that. And again, it shows that connection of community on going both ways.
It
both
does,
how the
because we
community's-
wouldn't be who we were if the community didn't support us. So it's one of our ways to give back. Whether it's from the 1920s when our grandfather was here, during the time when my dad and uncle and my aunt were here, or the time when we had such a difficult transition. But the community has always been there to support us. You know, whether it's to buy a car, service a car, to offer knowledge. You know, when we came out here, I was telling you, Penny Eddy from McKean County Housing and Redevelopment guided us towards the Clarion Small Business Development Center to help us with a business plan and point us in the right direction to North Central. And all the people in the community who've chosen to be our customers. We're ever so thankful.
Yeah.
Ever so thankful.
Yeah, well, we're thankful for you guys, and what a long-standing business, and I love just that it's been passed down from family member to family member to family member. So it's been awesome to hear your stories. Is there anything else that you guys would want to share before we wrap up today that you didn't get a chance to?
Not really. I think you've touched on, a lot of good questions. I think we've told our story. We could probably stand here for 5 hours.
I'm sure there's a million more.
And share more testimonials of customers and things we've been through the years. But I think we've pretty much hit on all the main points.
It's been so awesome to hear. How about you, Sue? Any other last
I think
words?
the only thing would be to thank you for doing this 100 Days of Kane, because I think it celebrates all the people who make up the community, and that's what's special about Kane. That's what makes our community different from any other place, is the people.
I agree.
I mean, the people who support a new business coming in, established businesses, the relationships that we have, people helping each other. And I think that's what makes Kane a special place to live. We have lots of good memories of growing up here.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for sharing your memories today.
All right.
And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Isn't it so exciting to hear the stories of how a family business has been passed through generation to generation, and we have many businesses like that in Kane. This is just one of many that has a similar story. And so I would love to hear from you guys today. What are some of the businesses that you love in Kane, that you go to often, that you spend a lot of time in? Our business community is one of the gems of what we have to offer here. So I'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and comment below. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 96.